Hey guys, James Wilson-Taylor here for Rock Sound. It's another of our video calls. We are chatting with everybody while we're all at home at the minute. I am delighted to say from Hands Like Houses, Trenton's on the line. How are you, man?
I'm very well. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Nice to see you again. And we'll start this off in the way that we've started off every single one of these, which is to, of course, say I hope you and your family and your loved ones all keeping safe and well in this rather odd period of time that we find ourselves in. We'll talk about music and stuff in a second, but just generally, how has your lockdown been going for you? How have you been occupying your time over there?
Yeah, man. Look, I'm pretty lucky in that my normality is not far off this. My wife and I both work from home, and we kind of live in a small kind of semi-rural town, like an hour and a half north of Sydney, 2 hours maybe, depends on how far you drive. But yeah, no, life's been pretty normal in a lot of ways, but I think it's more just kind of, just the work situation that's the biggest difference for us. But we are well. It's been a roller coaster of a year, but definitely in a pretty good spot. Australia's pretty lucky compared to the rest of the world in a lot of ways. So
yeah, sounds it, man. No, absolutely, no, good place to be right now. And it's funny you mentioned the work thing. Of course, we'll talk about the new music and stuff, but I do feel like you guys were quite quick to get onto ways to try and adapt. I mean, you've doing live streams back in like what, March, I think was your first one.
yeah,
Stuff. Yeah, that's a great thing to be able to get on it that soon. And I've always been asking everyone when they've been doing these, what were those challenges? I imagine particularly early on when not many people had done it, it must have been quite a daunting task, right?
for sure. For us, we were lucky that basically we actually kind of, part of the reason our first live stream came about is because we had booked out a bunch of lighting stuff for Download Festival here in Australia. And had our techs kind of all had taken time off and things like that. So when Download got cancelled, we had a bunch of people that we'd essentially deposited for their work. And we thought, well, what, can we do something with this? And ended up getting in touch with a local company that our front of house guy works with. And yeah, just kind of escalated from there, and we were able to do it quite quickly by just doing it in their car park, not overthinking it too much, just kind of spent a couple of weeks planning what it could be, and learn a lot by it and try to do it a bit more with a bit more polish the second time around. But yeah, it was a really good experience. It was good to get in early as well, because I think it kind of shaped, I think, a bit of expectation for the rest of our, part of the music world in Australia, at least. Because I think at that stage, we even had like on TV, like everyone just doing these little bedroom sessions. It was cool from an intimate standpoint, but just like it was either very clearly not live, or it was a bit scratchy around the edges, sure, and not in a good way. So it was kind of, for us, it was kind of the best of both worlds, and meant we got to, put on a show all the same.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned there as well. Of course, something I guess we kind of forget over here in the UK, when this all kicked in, obviously people had to pull their tours and stuff, which is, it's awful, every situation everyone's been in. You guys were about to kick off festival season. We forget this, of course. I mean, that's got to be such a surreal thing to be ready to go for something as big as Download as well, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Because I mean, after Download, I think we had like about a month or two before we were supposed to be heading back out to UK and Europe, with a couple of little festival dates with Sam Dunk, and one or two things in Europe, and then a run of shows with Normandy from who we toured with a year or two ago. And who knows what his time, I can't remember how long ago it was. Could have been 3 weeks, the way this year's felt. But
who knows, eh? Who knows?
So that was the first thing to kind of fall through, and we just kind of locked in this Australian headline tour that was going to be, really, really good. That's gone. And then we were talking about US plans for the end of this year. So it's kind of, obviously a lot of things disappeared, but we had the time then to kind of pivot and look at what we could do to make the most of the time. And for me personally, that kind of meant sinking a bit of time into like really engaging with our fan base to kind of talk about what, Hands Like Houses is to people that isn't us, and a chance to kind of really get into the storytelling around the album, because around the EP, I should say, with the EP, like just being able to kind of really look at the landscape, look at what we've put in there, and actually take the time to tell the story around and give it some context, rather than just put it out into the world and hope it sticks,
Yeah, that's interesting that the connection with the fans, because it's something we've seen with loads of bands, obviously just engaging a lot more online in general and wanting to, keep that fan base entertained and provide a distraction or whatever it is, keep that connection going. From talking directly, that's really interesting. You were looking to find out almost what their opinions were more and more on what you guys are doing and where you should go. Like, what did you actually learn from those conversations?
The biggest thing for me was I put out kind of a few little kind of questions on, particularly on Instagram, but also on Facebook as well, saying, look, just reply to this with, I think the question I asked was like, what is it about Hands Like Houses that you love? Like, what is it that about this band that means something to you, that gives you a reason to pay attention and listen to our music, care about it, whatever. I can't remember the exact wording of what I did, but kind of put that out there and ended up with literally dozens, if not hundreds, of just little video responses, some little text responses, and
yeah.
Sorry, my bad, low battery. Just kind of had all these like video responses and audio responses and little text ones, and kind of just screen capped it all, saved it all into a Google Drive folder, and just spent time kind of watching it and kind of looking for those kind of common threads of between things. And, some people had some amazing stories that, kind of wrote back to. Some people, it was just kind of really valuable feedback, and obviously didn't have the chance to reply to absolutely everything, but had some really cool conversations off the back of that about, what it is about our music that resonates, especially across albums as well, because everyone always has their favorite, and we're always a band that has tried to take, a solid step forward and to the side with each release. But, just kind of trying to find that, you know what I mean? Like that common kind of equilibrium of what people enjoy about what we're doing. So that kind of helped me, I think, shape not the story of it, but how I told it. So we one thing out of that was, and what I've actually been working on tonight is what I call context teasers, which is basically these little like kind of musical slowed down like little discussions of what the songs are actually about. So because we always do like track by track for some press outlet for every EP, and it always just feels kind of rote to where you're just sitting on a computer like typing out this breakdown of each song. And I think being able to kind of actually just speak it out loud and then put some context to it, like put some visuals behind it. So with Space, we had the LAX footage from a friend of ours, Sam Shapiro. We could put in behind that, which in itself was amazing footage, and kind of branded, like colorized it and stuff to kind of make it fit our artwork and things. And talking a bit about what the meaning of the song is and like how it came about in that short little context was just a really cool way to kind of create, I think, an emotional context to what the songs were and where they came from. So
it's a good thing to do. Always establish that connection even more, especially at a time like this where you can't be back in front of them in the big sweaty rooms. It's nice to be able to do something like that, for sure. It makes a lot of sense. Let's dive into the EP a little bit, by the way, because my first thing, it's the first thing that leaps out to me, because whenever someone names something self-titled, there is always a reason and a thought process behind it. There's normally a bit of a mission statement there. I always say it's mission statements with album titles, but particularly when it's something self-titled like the EP is. Why now? Why do you think that sums it up?
So for like the usual answer is like, oh, this is definitively X band, Yeah. To me, there's no such thing as definitive Hands Like Houses record. I think there's the records we feel most comfortable in, but that might just be because of who we are now relating to who we have been. We're not the same band that we were 5 years ago because we're not the same people we were 5 years ago and beyond. You know what I mean? Like it's so I think for us, the conversation came about when we were talking through maybe some of the artwork ideas. We were talking about like, well, what are the lyrical themes and what links the songs together? And I think, because of the immediacy of the recording process, we had to really lock in on like what the like what was most, like I said, immediate, like, because of the pressure of the time that we had in the studio, being compacted meant that we had to really embrace the first instinct and the immediacy of it. And so that actually made for some really interesting and difficult creative challenges of just getting over like differences in personal taste and opinion, because we hadn't had that time to kind of show each other songs and bounce ideas off each other and actually knuckle down on what they could be. It was just, we just had this big pile of all these separate little ideas. And so there was a lot of communication barriers, a lot of challenges in like translating ideas out of one person's head into another, which is hard at the best of times, let alone with the necessity to actually record something, that day to get started, So we were talking about those lyrical themes, and we thought, well, we actually, like EP artwork wise, we were talking about like different ways of communication. We came across the topic of Auslan, which is Australian Sign Language. And with the bushfires going into coronavirus at the start of this year, with these big press conferences and big announcements of like pretty significant lifestyle affecting news, there was always Auslan interpreters on screen. You are seeing more of that in different places because captions are like live machine read captions are always wrong. They never get the subtlety and nuance of meaning, especially because verb, like when we are speaking about something, we actually, if you transcribe every word verbatim that we say, it actually doesn't make sense a lot of the time for most people. Like at least grammatically and technically speaking. So a lot of it is in just the moment of that conversation. So Auslan is a good way of actually translating, really getting the emotion and the specifics, because it is like almost an abstract language that is a lot about interpretation and context. And so we thought, oh, look, that'd be a really cool idea to be able to translate the song titles into Auslan as an art standing point, especially being Hands Like Houses. You know, it's kind of obvious that, you know, to bring hands into it, but, you know, the unspoken, unofficial, unintended meaning of the band name is you kind of hold on to things that you care about to give them a place to belong. And in that in itself is a way of communicating how important something is to you by holding on to it. So there was that kind of cool like sense of things coming full circle as we were having that conversation. And it just meant that, yeah, it all kind of just fit together in this beautiful way. And the artwork came out phenomenally. So yeah.
Yeah,
really worked.
that's it's funny, isn't it? Like I've talked with so many people recently, either putting out new music or been writing new music in this year, about how things kind of took on different meanings. I think you must be the first where even the band name itself is making you go, "Oh wow, that is mad how much of a connection it has in that way." But a lovely thing to be able to sum it up that way.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I mean, for me, one thing that I really enjoyed about the process with that is that, you know, Auslan is not just a language. It is that there is a culture and an identity embedded in that. So rather than just kind of appropriating that culture and saying, well, this fits thematically, we actually, you know, I went on a bit of a journey, like kind of having some really interesting conversations, doing some reading about, you know, the actual subtext there, and spoke to a friend I went to college with who is deaf and taught me basic sign, like Auslan back in college, and I've forgotten most of it, but I decided rather than trying to learn Auslan per se, I'd try to learn more about it and more about the challenge. And I'm still in that process, and that's been kind of a really interesting kind of foothold into that conversation, but learning things about just subtle things about the culture. Like for example, you know, as a hearing person, I wouldn't have a sign name unless it was assigned to me by, you know, a deaf person or someone from the deaf community. So it's little things like that. You know, with our music video for Space, we wanted to include the Auslan in a way, but part of doing that authentically meant that we thought, well, let's see if we can cast you know, a deaf actor or actress for, you know, kind of the main role there. And the girl Yana, I think that was her name. Just she was really, really good. Like had such a beautiful way about her signing as well on the key lines. And, you know, our director had some really great chats with her about the different kind of cultural engagement and how to do it what's the word, like authentically. So even you know, we've tried to go, you know, obviously you can never make things truly cross compatible, but like I personally wanted to make sure that there was a couple of little things that we could do to make sure that there was a sense of accessibility to it. Like one thing my friend Jake was saying, that like he loves watching music videos, but they rarely have subtitles. So even it sounds so simple, because I mean, music is like, oh, well, you know, why would you make music for deaf people? Like they can't hear. But, and that, you know, obviously we're not trying to make music for that, but with these music videos that we've made, but just making sure that we had subtitles of the lyrics, just something as simple as that is a really important little kind of accessibility note that takes almost no effort at all. And it just means that it's still there and the conversation's still there. So
yeah, places the visuals more in context for everybody, I suppose, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, that really works. That definitely makes sense, man. It's nice to know. It's nice to see you being able to explore these kind of things and then learn new stuff in a kind of unexpected way, I suppose. It just kind of works out that way sometimes. It's definitely interesting to see what the reaction will be when the EP fully drops and everything. And speaking of the music in general, how much of this then was crafted beforehand, or was this entirely a lockdown based project for you guys? Did you have much ready to go beforehand? When did it all come together for you?
We'd actually written and recorded the EP in September last year.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So like, you know, it's funny talking about like, oh, we had all this time pressure and then but it's still coming out a year after we did it. But
right, yeah.
I think, part of that was because we flew our producer Colin out from LA to work with us. We had a beach house rented down Central Coast, and that was kind of our studio for, was supposed to be for, I think it was 10 days in the beach house. There was 4 days in the proper studio, Grove Studios, where we just did all the drums, because you can't make drums sound great in a random house in an Airbnb. And we're supposed to have a week of pre-production here at my place, and I've got a little music studio out the backyard. So yeah, it didn't quite work out that way. So we did put a lot of time pressure on ourselves, but we had a bunch of ideas prepped, and because it was the first time we'd recorded in Australia, we're all pretty comfortable in our kind of home routine, which meant that we'd put all these ideas into the folder, but we never actually sat down to say, what does this EP need to sound like? Like, what do we want it to be? What songs are we didn't even get time to really do a short list ourselves until 2 days before. And, because of some other commitments of Colin's, he had to kind of come out here a week later, which meant that we lost all that pre-production time, is where we would have figured all that out. So we kind of tried to do it ourselves a little bit, but it all just ended up just compressed. And yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though, when you've had that much time to kind of sit with it and let it settle before the release like this, particularly at a time like this when everyone is spending more time at home. Have you found that more ideas have been coming together since then? Have you got kind of more new music, not ready to go necessarily, but how is that happening? What's the creative situation been like of late?
There's a lot of conversations around it. We've definitely started, we're all demoing different ideas at different times. More recently, obviously, we focused on covers, a couple of covers. One was one that we did for Triple J's Like a Version here in Australia. There was one that we did, we did Shimmer by Fuel, which was really good fun, great song. We had another one kind of up our sleeves, just in case that song didn't work out, and that song we'll do something with Cool, and then with Soon, and there was another one we'd kind of jammed as an idea. We always bounce a bunch of ideas around, and there's a few things in the works there. I know there's a few demos for some stuff. We're looking at even doing some reimagined type versions of these songs already. So there's a bunch of stuff going on for us. We're trying to figure out how to restructure things so that we are putting out, obviously up to a good standard, but still releasing music a bit more often than we're used to. Just, small amounts more often, rather than, wait a few years and put out an album.
Yeah, I think it's what a lot of people are doing. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, I think, just to keep, especially when there's no shows at the minute, we hope they come back sooner rather than later. But obviously, a good way to be is just keep moving forward like that. So I guess, like you just said, I guess you see that being the plan moving forward, then whenever it may come, little bits of music here and there, maybe over the next year or so.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it makes it easier to kind of average out that evolution, I suppose, as well, because I think one thing that people forget often, particularly when bands are going through album cycles, is that a piece of music is a photograph. It's a moment in time. It's like a photograph of that very moment. So there's so many factors that outside of things like our work schedules, for example. If we have jobs and work commitments outside of the band, it means that one or two of us might not be putting as much energy in because we don't have as much time to spend on it for a particular song. And so that song kind of leans more, that average leans more towards the guys who have got the time to be more invested. And that's kind of been the ebb and flow of our creative process for a while. So I think it's just embracing things as that kind of photograph in time. And that's why I think this EP has come together with such a intensity of the story and the immediacy of what happened with the studio time. It is that photograph of where we're at that time. And if we went in to write a 5-song EP in the same circumstance now, it'd be totally different. But
yeah, there we go. It'll be interesting to see how you guys adapt and what you keep churning out, man. Keep doing it. Congrats on the EP. And like I say, I just hope we get to see you in the UK when we can, sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed, maybe next year, slam dunk, all those kind of good things. But in the meantime, man, take care of yourself. Love to the rest of the guys, and we'll speak to you again soon, all right?
Sounds good. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice one. Trenton, everybody.